Hi, and welcome to the episode of CineNation. My name is Brandon Sparks.
And I'm Thomas Horton.
And we're throwing out the format again. We're changing it up. Last week, because now we're doing weekly in the midst of this quarantine. Last week we talked about Bull Durham. We tend to talk about genres in the show or directors, and with the lack of sports, we decided we should talk a little bit about sports movies during the month of April and just see where it goes. And we're going to pick a movie for each episode. We'll try to do week by week. It might be every 2 weeks. We'll figure it out. Everything's up in the air. We're all trying to make sense of this. I'm watching Bill Simmons constantly to see what's happening in terms of sports news because they're more entertaining than ESPN right now at The Ringer. Have you watching their content right now on The Ringer?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying their content.
I've been watching a lot of the redraftables they've been doing, like just to see just because that's an interesting segment to do and with all this happening. Like ESPN have honestly not been paying attention to.
Honestly, I mean, here's the thing about The Ringer. The Ringer is so much better equipped for this sort of thing because so much of The Ringer is based around these like really abstract concepts of sports and the idea, the Shea Serrano type thing of like if you could build if you could build your ideal basketball team made of like half NBA players and half movie characters, what would they be? Like that's the kind of stuff that the Ringer's built on, and ESPN is like pretty more straightforward.
Let's talk about how LeBron James and Michael Jordan, two greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
Debate. Like it feels very much like they can work within this concept of like, let's just go every year and redraft the NBA draft and then say why we picked these guys. And when watching them, or listening and watching to them, it's they get like, they've done a lot of research and they go very in depth. Like, okay, if I want a guy who's a good team player as a role player and like is good analytics for nowadays. So they're looking at like how the game was played in the mid 90s to late 90s to how the game's being played now and how certain players were just too ahead of their time. I do think ESPN's best content was that celebrity game that Katie Nolan did.
That was amazing. I love that video.
It's Always Late with Katie Nolan. Underrated show. It's on ESPN. Everyone's stuck to doing
but once again, another format that is kind of built around like playing with different sports concepts and not really straightforward it's just sports reporting. So what we're really finding now is when you can't just like report the day's stats, you got to get creative. I think ESPN might be kind of wishing they still had Grantland at this point.
I know, right? Anyway, we did a baseball movie last week at Bull Durham. This week, we are going to do Friday Night Lights. Football movies they're popular, but I don't think there's really been like one great football movie. If that makes there's never been like a perfect football movie.
Yeah, the very fact that most people would probably point you to Rudy shows you that there really hasn't been a great one out there.
Not a fan of Rudy, Thomas?
That's fine. I just don't need to watch it every year.
I think it's overrated personally.
I think it's kind of boring. I don't get why it's got the mainstream appeal that it does.
Well, it's the underdog story, and sports movies, like you don't really want to watch a sports movie about a perfect team or a perfect player. You really want that flawed character, that flawed team, or that seen as inferior player, inferior team. And Rudy kind of fits in that. I just think I think it was the same director that did Hoosiers, if I'm not mistaken. And I feel like he does it better in Hoosiers. Mm-hmm. I think the whole like nostalgic kind of view and the sentimental music and the underdog and rising up against it. Like, yeah, I think Rudy's fine. I get it if you love it, but I do think like if that's, like you say, if that's the movie that's picked as the best one, there's an issue. And I love Remember the Titans. I think Remember the Titans, if that's also your favorite football movie, that feels like it's I don't want to say it's kind of a watered down version of football. I think football is just kind of the backdrop for Remember the Titans. It's more about race and kind of overcoming these kind of issues at a point in America.
Yeah, there's really only one good football moment in that whole movie, and it's when Sunshine flips that guy.
I love the ending. I love the ending touchdown in that movie, though. It's not Petey. It's Rev.
Rev, yeah.
Rev's running touchdown. Sunshine's blocking for everyone. It's a great one shot.
Yeah.
I think also the guy who did the football choreography for that movie did the football choreography for Friday Night Lights. Anyway, Friday Night Lights came out in 2004, October 2004. Kind of in the midst of a sports boom in terms of movies. It feels like you have like Miracle was that same year. Coach Carter's around that time in 2005. It's a very like people are going to see these mid-budget sports movies. I've seen Friday Night Lights kind of over time, numerous times over the years. Being from Alabama, being in a football town, not a high school football town, but a college football town.
Real quick, I was thinking about that when I was watching this yesterday. I mean, you guys had high school football, but did people really care much about it?
Yes. Okay, here's the thing. I have a story just because our football team sucked in high school. Like
we won state my senior year, I'd just like to say. Berkeley High School Stags state championship senior year.
You know what we did? We won 3 games in my 4 years of high school. Okay?
Jesus.
Paul D. Bryant High School, named after the greatest football coach, or greatest college football coach, arguably the greatest football coach of all time. And our team sucked. We went 0-30 at one point and had the longest losing streak in Alabama at one point. We weren't good. My freshman year, we won 1 game, and it was against our like city rival. So it was like, at least we beat them, was kind of the whole thing, like 21-17. And so the next year comes up, this is off topic, but the next year comes up, we're losing all of our games again. And we're going against North, which we're going to beat them again this year. They beat us 84-12. That should not be a score.
Nope.
Like football scores should never go that high.
Especially not high school football.
So football was still big in my town, but there was always like 1 or 2 really good schools. We also have a lot of high schools in my town. People don't realize because they're just like a town of like 100,000, 150,000. We have like at least 8 high schools, maybe more in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so we have a lot. So you have like county, you have private, you have public schools, or city, you have city schools, and then you have Tuscaloosa City, then you have Tuscaloosa County, and then you had private schools as well. So you had a lot.
We were the town. I think there's a shot. I think it's in the pilot of the show where it just shows that like all the businesses in town are closed down for Friday night. We weren't that big.
We weren't that either. No,
but it was. I mean, you saw everyone you knew in town was at the game Friday night. Like, you just saw everybody who lived in town was there. Like
yeah. With high school, it was like everyone at school was at the game, at least for the first half of the season. At least in our school, when it got to the last half of the season,
first 15 losses.
Bro, the last half of the season, it was a cemetery. Like you look at that student section, it's like no one. And it's just the teachers that are there and the parents. With Texas, it's a little bit different because Friday nights are so important because it's like Friday you have high school football, Saturday you have UT and Texas college football, and then Sunday you have Dallas Cowboys. That's kind of like, that's your weekend. I've watched this a couple times throughout the years. You have not seen this since it came out, correct?
I probably saw it a year or 2 after it came out, yeah. And had seen pieces of it since, but did not feel any need to revisit it until now. Yeah,
we actually, and one of our professors at USC showed clips from this, if you remember. Everett showed clips from this. So what were your initial thoughts when looking back, when watching this film after almost like 15 years?
Well, I mean, like I told you, I think in that opening sequence, I was just immediately like Peter Berg 100% like watched Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday and took note. Like it's very flashy and it's very just cut, and here's chaotic. Here's a sentence over here, here's a sentence over here. And one of my first thoughts, I think I even wrote it down on my phone, which we can come back to this as like a topic to talk about later. Is like, is this the only way to shoot football for film?
That's interesting,
because even something like Remember the Titans, which isn't necessarily quick, when it's on the field, it's just quick cuts. And I mean, I'm assuming you've got I looked it up on Friday Night Lights. You've got real football players on the field. You've got a football choreographer. Like, where's the shot from top of the stands looking down at the field? Like, I don't know. Every once in a while, I just love to see a pass, like just from above. Just watch it actually you go across the space and see somebody grab it kind of thing.
It's not shot like NFL films, basically.
Yeah.
NFL films always like it's shot on the sideline from the angle the camera's on film.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and you know, maybe we might see, because we've had a recent trend if you're comparing, you know, football film choreography to fight choreography. There's a recent trend, especially brought on by John Wick, to kind of put the camera down and just let the choreography play out and not involve the camera so much in the choreography. So who knows? Maybe we'll get a revolution in football films coming up where someone trusts to do that too. But
yeah, it's very montaging. That's what happened, because you have your big like football montage, at least when it's a team movie where they're winning. Mm-hmm. Oh, they're finally winning. They're coming together during this time, and
they're great. They're a great team. They won state. They're on their way to another state championship. They're good to go.
My view of this film actually went down when rewatching it, and I think it's because when I look at movies now, I'm looking more at like the way the story's being told. Mm-hmm. And it's also, I think, sometimes where when you're younger, you kind of remember certain things that the movie's trying to say. And you're like, oh, that really captured like what I was feeling when I was in high school, or that was kind of my town, like hanging out on the weekends with people, all these parties. And then when I watch it, I realize those moments that I gravitated towards are not that big in the movie. Like, it's mostly about just football.
There's a great metaphor within this movie for a lot of the like themes and social issues in this movie. That last drive, the championship game, they're working so hard, and they don't quite make the end zone. And it feels like it feels like most of the storylines in this movie don't quite make it quite get a touchdown.
Everything feels surface level when rewatching it.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know about Friday Night Lights, to break down the story for you, in case you haven't seen it, because I'm finding out so much about this movie when rewatching it, because this movie was also, we got a show out of it 2 years later that was on NBC, starring Kyle Chandler and Connie Britton. I had never watched the show before. Weirdly, when researching this movie, I realized that the show was way more popular than the actual movie. It might be because like when I was growing up again in Alabama, when this movie came out, everyone was so like, oh, Friday Night Lights, this is the football movie to watch. And so that was more talked about, when the show didn't get a lot of play where I was from, which is kind of surprising. Did not get a lot of play.
Especially when I was in like college, you could talk to people about Friday Night Lights and they wouldn't even know that there was a movie.
Exactly. Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. And see, I think it was because like I thought it was just gonna be the same thing as the movie, because I was like, when I saw Connie Britton in the show, I was like, oh, they're just casting some of the same people from the movie. So yeah, I didn't realize. Also, too, and I said this in the text, is that I think Friday Night Lights was in the was one of the early shows in the whole golden age of television, because Friday Night Lights the show came out in 2006, 2 years after the film. At that point, you didn't have Breaking Bad, you didn't have Walking Dead, even you didn't have Mad Men. The only shows that I think that I remember that were out in terms of like prestige television was like Sopranos and The Wire. And Friday Night Lights feels like it was, I wonder how it would do nowadays, because it feels like it was almost a little too ahead of its time. And it was on the wrong network, because it was on NBC. And when watching even the first episode of the show, it feels like, man, what would this be like on like even just a Netflix? Because you can tell like these characters, like they don't want to be hindered by standard and practice where they can't cuss on a show.
Right.
Like I hearing Kyle Chandler saying like "doggone it" or something like that, I'm just like, he wants to say something else.
Yeah.
And you feel like you want to go there, but you just kind of can't. So I do wonder if this show came on a few years later, where would it have been at? And then what happens later is that it doesn't have good ratings for the first 2 years. And so NBC cancels it, and then DirecTV steps in and decides, hey, we'll distribute it for a couple seasons. And so it ends up being played on DirecTV, and then they still have a deal with NBC. So basically DirecTV plays it, and then 6 months later, NBC gets to air it. So it's like DirecTV was like in the early game of getting content for their subscribers. before that was really a thing, and they're kind of saving shows, which now you give towards Netflix and Prime and all these streaming services. They were doing it in mid 2000s, so Friday Night Lights was weirdly kind of a template for how certain shows would go in the modern era of television. Is how I feel. Anyway, so Friday Night Lights. It's about it was based on a book by A.G. Biesinger. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, sir. It was about his time where he went down to Texas and followed the Permian high school football team, or in Odessa, Texas, for a year. And Permian was kind of this, like, just one of the big football programs of Texas. Was won a lot of state championships, and you're having this kind of new coach come in, Coach Gary Gaines, and he followed him for a season and then wrote a book about not just the team, but the town, the culture, the history of the town, all these different things to kind of like, and you were kind of in the book, you're kind of talking about the racial tensions in the town, the economic boom, and the economic drought in the town, and how football was kind of this town's only thing. The book came out in 1990, and still is regarded as kind of like one of the best football books of all time. They tried to make the movie a couple times. It was NBC tried to get it and turn it into a TV show early on. That didn't happen, so they actually kind of took the idea and did a TV show called Against the Grain, which was basically Friday Night Lights, but not Friday Night Lights. And the guy who starred in it, the young, like, kind of quarterback,
Kyle Chandler,
Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
And John Terry, who was in Lost, Stephen Tobolowsky from Groundhog Day. And that was 93. So the Alan Pakula, who directed All the President's Men, reads the book, goes to Brian Grazer, who's Ron Howard's producer, and is like, hey, this should be a movie. Pakula is attached to it for about 2 years. He drops out, but Grazer keeps getting attached to it. And it finally gets made with Peter Berg. And so the idea was kind of wanting to capture the football culture of Odessa, Texas. And what I was saying is that in this movie, I missed stuff that I thought I saw. It was just kind of like, it didn't really delve into the stuff that the book does with the racial tensions, the really town culture of Odessa that I feel like I thought was in the movie, but was missing. But I don't want to keep giving negatives about it. So Thomas, did you like this movie in your rewatch?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I liked the cast, especially the younger cast. A lot of those guys, it made me go, oh man, like, I wonder what these guys are up to. And like, what's the guy's name? The guy from Antoine Fisher.
Derek Luke.
Yeah. I was like, where's Derek Luke? I haven't seen him in forever. He was fantastic. He used to be great. Like, yeah. But I looked him up. He's doing a lot of television, and just like shows that I haven't seen. So
yeah, he did 13 Reasons Why. That was the last thing I saw him, and he was like assistant principal or something.
It made me just remember how much I love Jay Hernandez. I continue to love Jay Hernandez. If I had any interest in watching Magnum PI, I would do it. But sorry, Biscus, I do not.
Yeah, we have a friend that works there.
But he is great in it. I watched the pilot, and he's fantastic. I texted you guys on our group text, and I was like, WTF, I think I like Garrett Hedlund now, because I watched this, and I watched Triple Frontier last week, and never really understood the appeal of that guy, but actually kind of enjoyed him. Enjoyed him in this. And then of course there's Lucas Black. Yeah. He's also in this movie.
Also doing a lot of TV.
Sure.
NCIS New Orleans.
Fine. Cool. Good for him.
He's also going to be, he's in Fast 9 coming out next year now.
Great. Won't see that either.
He's half his face is shown in the last trailer when you find out John Cena is Vin Diesel's brother.
Cool. Main character of this movie, not great. Just gonna say.
Lucas Black, Mike Winchell. Well, what about Billy Bob?
Billy Bob, honestly, could have been given more.
Yeah, it is a very different role for him though in this movie.
Yeah, and it's just not. I didn't necessarily feel like I got a lot of him in this movie. Like, even like the show, the coach is definitely one of the main focuses, but it didn't feel like and maybe because we didn't know like anything about his home life. You said Connie Britton had 10 lines in this movie. I didn't count a single one. at least not something that you could hear. Like you see her like looking at him and you see them interacting,
Yeah.
but I didn't count one thing that was like a distinctive line for her.
You have one scene when he's looking at film right before the state championship, and she sits down in front of him, has like maybe 3 lines.
I missed that part. But yeah,
she has like nothing. She has
up
nothing.
until the maybe the third act. His he has like 3 different times where he goes up to somebody and he says, "Have you forgotten how to play football?" And they say, "No, sir." And he says, "Well, go out there and play some football." And I'm like, "Oh, is that his coaching style to remind people that they're playing football?" Yeah, he's good. He's good.
With the history of the film, I was talking about how it got made. Brian Grazer was attached to it as a producer. And I want to talk about Billy Bob a little bit because I wanted to give the casting choice of who was actually offered the role at one point. Originally offered the role of Coach Gary Gaines, according to an LA Times article in 2004, Tom Hanks was originally offered the role of head football coach of Permian High School for Friday Night Lights. I don't know if that would have worked.
No, you got to be able to doubt him. You got to be like, I don't know if this guy can pull this off, and Tom Hanks can pull it off.
Yeah, he's Tom Hanks. Billy Bob just had, but I do think it's a very different role for Billy Bob Thornton. It's very much a more quiet role, even though he's yelling a lot, but more. Maybe Everyman is what's going for. Like, you're coming off of Bad Santa, which was the year before.
Yeah, I mean, he's really like a template for any high school football coach anywhere. Like they I feel like they kind of purposefully leave him very blank so you can be like, oh, that was my coach. Or yeah.
But so I wanted to give the directors real quick, because we were saying you kind of didn't like it, and I feel like there's one director in here that you might have liked. That'd be an interesting movie. Alan Pakula, like I said, was attached to direct it. Ted Demme was also attached to direct at one point, who did Blow, Beautiful Girls, and Life. The big one who's attached to it wrote a script for it, and they said it was way too long and kind of didn't really capture what the book captured. Richard Linklater was attached to do this.
I'd watch that.
Point. And I was just like, is that just like the football is probably like 20 minutes and the rest is just like the after party of a football game?
Yeah, or just the town like capture. Yeah.
I feel like that's what it would have been. I feel like I heard they said there was like no conflicts, and it was like a 2.5 hour long movie, and they're just like, we can't make this.
Yeah. I mean, look how much the baseball plays and everybody wants some.
That's what I told someone. I was like, basically, it would have been everybody wants some, but like more dramatic, like not as comedic. But maybe it would have been comedic. I don't know. Yeah, so it finally got made because of Peter Berg. Peter Berg was coming off of only 2 movies at that point. It was I think a movie called Very Bad Things. It's like black comedy, and then The Rundown with The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Was not. I argue it's The Rock's best movie, but it was a box office failure. It was an $85 million budget, only made $80 million. Peter Berg directed it, and he finally was able to pitch to get to do Friday Night Lights. Weirdly, his cousin is the book's original author. His second cousin wrote the book, and he actually read the book before it ever got published. And so he really wanted to make it. He would go down and like he would fly on the Permian and Odessa and watch the football games, and kind of do the same thing his cousin did with studying the football culture of the town. Universal backed down it multiple times, twice over the years. Finally, Peter Berg convinced them to fly down to Odessa to watch Permian play their homecoming football game. So in this rewatch, what were your favorite scenes when watching this movie?
There's 2 like very dramatic scenes that I thought worked really well. One, I think, was what we were shown in. I had definitely seen it since the movie came out, but it's the scene where Booby, the star player who has since been injured, where he goes back and cleans out his locker and realizes that, you know, he and his uncle have both been denying that he's injured. And when he cleans out his locker and like really realizes that his football career is over, and all, but my other, I think, favorite scene is when Garrett Hedlund's character is driving his father home from a game, and his father's drunk and is bashing out the windows of his car, and to just see like a young man who's like carrying so much on his shoulders already, so much responsibility because of football, to also just be completely responsible for his father as well, is really heavy, and Hedlund does it really well, and surprisingly Tim McGraw plays it really well. And I understand now why Tim McGraw had an acting career after this movie. I don't think he was particularly good in anything after this. But
I love Tim McGraw in this movie. I'm just gonna be real.
Yeah, like, he's really good in this, and yeah, he's great.
Those are actually both my two scenes as well.
Well, and I think that's when we get to like what didn't work, we can continue this. But I think part of the reason I have negative feelings about this movie is because it kind of drops. Both of those scenes are like the peak of that emotional storyline, but they still need resolution, and yeah, they're not really given good resolution.
No, and it feels like it's kind of like with Tim McGraw and Garrett Hedlund, I think you have two scenes afterwards. After that, you have the next, because that's when he throws his ring out the window as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I also said that was like kind of the best sequence, because you're cutting back between that scene and you're cutting back between Billy Bob Thornton and Lucas Black at the gas station or the gas station restaurant doing the coin toss to win to see who goes to the playoffs. I think it's a well cut scene. And I think you're kind of seeing the peak for kind of everyone at that moment in time. But yeah, after that, you have, I think, one scene with Tim McGraw and Garrett Hedlund when Tim McGraw is trying to apologize, and then Garrett Hedlund like leaves the state ring on the counter. And then you have the scene at the end of the football game where Tim McGraw comes up and gives him the ring, and that's it. That's kind of like, you've seen this father kind of abuse his son the entire time, and like the entire, like, bad, physically abusive to his son, and then it just kind of jumps like, oh, we're good now. Yeah. And they're just like, and Don and his dad are still close to this day, and you're like, that's all it took?
That guy one needs to go to rehab, and two, physically abused his son, like beat him.
Like he duct tapes a football to his hands and then starts beating him beating it. It's like insane. Also, a young Amber Heard in that scene, by the way. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, I saw her on the IMDb. I pulled it up on IMDb as the movie was starting, and I was like, oh, this must be where she got her start. And then she has like one line.
And it's her having sex with Garrett Hedlund, basically, is what it is. And Tim McGraw walks in watching.
Well, since we've already kind of gone into that, the thing with Booby's storyline is that he has this amazing scene where he comes out. You've seen him before he goes to the school to pack up his stuff. You see him watching some guys dump garbage, and you realize that he is starting to see that, like, because we've heard him say he doesn't care about school, he doesn't care about grades, he hasn't studied at all, he can barely read. We see him like trying to read a letter, and he can barely get through it. And there's this shot of him watching these guys dump trash, and you realize that he's starting to see that he's poured his whole life into football, and now he can't do anything except play football. And he comes out of the locker room and he starts crying to his uncle who has pushed him and only wanted the best for him the whole time. And is wonderful. That actor, I looked him up. He must be a local Texas actor, because he's almost everything he's appeared in has been like Texas based projects, but he's great in it. And he's just like, he's crying, and he's like, all I can do is play football. What can I do now? What can I do now? And you have this moment if you're like, oh my God, like, is high school football worth it? Yeah. Is it worth this risk of like ruining someone's life? And college football is the same. Is it worth costing them their education? Is it worth costing them their health for what, our entertainment? Like, and it brings up all these questions. And then the next thing you see is him asking if he can come, sit on the sidelines at the championship, and you see him being a good sport to everyone and like cheering everyone on, and he's really motivational, but we never see him. We see that moment of, oh my gosh, my life is ruined by football, and then the next thing we see him at the championship cheering everyone on, and we never go any deeper into that.
Did you bring that part up? That's not what happened, actually. So he did not come back to the state championship game. Good. He after the Midland League game, he did not get re-injured. They didn't play him. And he was just like, what am I doing this for? And then just quit and never showed back up. That's what happened. In the speech at halftime, when Billy Bob Thornton's talking about Booby, the assistant coach that's standing next to him is actually Booby Miles, the real life guy. That's cool. And he plays one of the assistant coaches who's kind of just, I don't think has much going on in the movie. He's always in the background, during those scenes, but it's the real
but
life.
it throughout the movie, it just kind of feels like, because obviously Peter Berg is very close to the story, he's very close to the book, and it constantly feels like he knows, oh, we need to talk about the cost of
these things.
Football.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to talk about abusive parents pushing their kids into football. But then he just doesn't know where to go with it. So he's like, all right, I brought it up. It's over there. Let's get back to the football. Like,
my apartment just started shaking. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like a book just fell. That's why I was like, no, there's construction going outside, like huge construction on my streets. And my apartment started shaking. I was just like, what was that? And then a book falls, and I'm like, hope we're good.
Earthquake or construction, one or the other. Welcome to Los Angeles.
It's one of the two. Welcome to LA. Not much is happening right now. My room is like still kind of shaking. Anyway, I'll look it up later on LBot on Twitter, or LA Earthquake Bot, or whatever it is. Yeah, I feel like you're saying, I think that all, like, it's hints of it. And that's why I think when watching the first season of the show, after I rewatch this movie, it definitely feels like in the show, it's those same things that are brought up in the movie, but they go more in depth with it. They go more in depth with like the race relations of the town. They go more in depth with kind of the family life of a football coach. A lot of my issues with the movie, they kind of try to explore more in the show that I've seen so far.
Yeah, well, and even with Lucas Black's character, the first half of the movie, we just hear constantly people talking about his grandmother and his mom. His mom and her mental health, and we see him trying to get his brother to come help with his mom. He doesn't know if he wants to even try and play football in college because he doesn't want to leave his mom. And then that's never brought back up. Like, we never get a resolution to that storyline.
He's the guy who's trying to get out of town, and try to get out of Texas, but never really gets
overall,
out.
It feels like a movie that where someone said, "Hey, most football movies are just about that championship ring. It's just about playing the football. We want to make a movie that's about everything else these kids are dealing with in their life." But then, in the end, it just ends up being another movie about trying. And even though they don't win, spoiler, it's like, hey, it didn't matter. It was about the journey, kind of thing. But we don't really tie up any of that, like, players' lives stuff that they wanted to
trying
talk
to
about.
set up. Yeah, it feels like they were trying to make an anti-football movie that became a football movie. That's what it was like. Because when I'm watching it this time, I was like, there's a lot more football in this film that I remember. Like, it's a lot of football. And
maybe maybe they needed a television format.
I think they did, because someone told me, they was like, people who like the movie are the people who love football. The ones who don't really like football love the show, because the show, it almost feels like football is used as an afterthought. It's there to set up the show, but when you get later in the episodes, like some episodes don't have football at all, maybe a practice, or it's like, oh yeah, it's the last 5 minutes of the episode, we gotta have a game real quick. Like, that's what it is. Like, it's all about more of like Kyle Chandler and Connie Britton's marriage. It's about what ends up happening is that the quarterback ends up dating the coach's daughter.
Well, and that's something else. The movie starts to set up in the first maybe 20 minutes, like, these relationships that these kids are in, which is another thing. When you think about all the responsibility and all the stress of being a high schooler and dealing with carrying the weight of an entire town on your shoulders, when you throw in, being a teenager and puberty and being in your first relationships and all that kind of stuff, when you throw that into, that makes it more complicated. And the pilot of the show definitely deals with that a lot. Like the girlfriends of the players and the guys who are like starting to talk to girls and all that kind of stuff. And the movie like talks about that in the first maybe 20 minutes and then never revisits any of that ever again.
Not at all. And another thing that it does in the show is that you actually see other people like some of the kids having jobs. So like the quarterback ends up taking care of his sick grandmother while also ends up being the starting quarterback at the football team, while also tries to get good grades, and also is like one of the head guys like a local like burger joint. And then like the running back Smash in the show, who's kind of like the Boobie Miles like surrogate, he needs a job. And so he starts working with the quarterback at the burger stand. And it's just kind of like, so you start seeing like just the show really captures to me like small town life, which is why I watched the show so quickly, the first season at least, after watching this, because it felt like everything that I had issue with it not delving deep enough in the movie, it did in the TV show. but to our next 2 points, because we'll get back to this too. What worked about the movie?
I mean, the football works. It's like I said earlier, is this the only way to shoot football? Because this works. And I'd like to see somebody try like a long take or shoot it like a ESPN shoots a game. Like I'd like to see that. Yeah. But it obviously works shot like this with the quick cuts, great sound editing, people smashing into each other. It's exciting. And the games are really, really well done. The games are really exciting, and the like you said, it thinks it's an anti-football movie, but it is a football movie. All that stuff that we know about the people off the field helps. All the stress that Garrett Hedlund is under to not fumble and is being literally abused when he goes home if he fumbles. Makes every time he gets the ball, you're on the edge of your seat. All of that works. And that might be the problem, is that it works so well that even the filmmakers themselves lost sight of the other stuff.
It's like, oh, we have to do that. We have to show football now because that's what's going to sell tickets. Was kind of probably the idea was that, oh, we have to show it's a sports movie. We have to throw sports in here. Yeah, I agree. I think the football. I think the visual style is what holds up the most and what works what works well in this film. It feels like it kind of that became Berg's style a little bit later, especially when we get the Lone Survivor and all that, is that he kind of takes a couple detours after this movie by like doing Hancock and Battleship. But it feels like he really likes exploring kind of America, or like the Americana, and kind of the regular everyman type characters. And I think Friday Night Lights kind of sets that up.
EP on the first season of Leftovers.
Yeah.
Another thing I think worked very well is I really like, and the pilot picks this up as well. I noticed I really like the use of the local radio station as kind of almost narration because so much of it is about the town. You're just constantly hearing what people in the town think of the team through call-ins to the local sports radio station. And I think that's really well done. And you hear at the beginning, you hear everybody's like all about the coach and supporting the coach, and I think there's somebody that says the coach makes more money than the principal, and then he says he should make $100,000, and
as long as we win football games, baby.
And then later on you hear people calling in and they're like, man, I hate the coach, I don't know what he's doing, he needs to be fired, we need a new coach. I thought that device worked really well, and it feels realistic. It feels like it gives you that small town flavor really well.
Yeah, it does that in the show. And I just started episode 1 of season 2, and literally kind of in the first practice, it does the same thing where it's like, here's who we have returned this year, and then basically it's like it reintroduces all of your characters and establishes the conflict of season 2 through the narration of the opening radio narration. Basically,
this is Tim Riggins. He drinks a little too much, and his girlfriend he's insecure about his girlfriend fighting with his other teammates.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's just kind of like we have all-star running back Smash Williams returning this year with Max Saracen trying to create a second good season or whatever. And I don't want to spoil it if anyone watches the show or hasn't watched it and wants to watch it, but like there's something that happened at the end of season 1 that really changes the dynamic of the team that's brought up at the beginning of season 2 in the radio narration.
Oh.
Don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, I was watching the pilot today, and my girlfriend who had seen it was kind of like, oh, something's gonna happen in the pilot and you don't know, and I was like, quarterback's gonna get injured, and she was like, how'd you know? And I was like, well, for one, I don't know this actor at all, so he's not the star of this show. I know. 2, we wouldn't have spent so much time with the second string quarterback if he wasn't going to play all season. That's and true. 3, in the movie, one of their stars goes down early, and I think they were just setting it up.
It definitely takes a lot of like kind of stuff from the movie in terms of like certain setups, the characters. But like Boomy didn't get paralyzed. Like they've just paralyzed the quarterback in the first episode, and you're just like, cool, you're gonna follow this kid, and it does. It's like the whole season you're following the guy who becomes quarterback. you're following the guy who became paralyzed, and now it's kind of the same thing with Booby. It's like, what do I do with my life? Like, I was so ready to play football and be a football player. I'm about to go to Notre Dame, and now like I probably won't ever walk again. And football did this to me. And he doesn't see it as like negatively. He's like, oh, like I made the mistake and I hit the guy wrong or whatever. So anyway, so that's the stuff that worked, was kind of the visuals and kind of the early hints of what the show would become. Now, what didn't work? Because I have some lists.
I got a big one. I know you got a big one too, because I texted you yesterday. I was like, "Ooh, this is rough," and you were like, "Yeah."
Yes.
The racism in this movie is weird.
Yeah.
It's not just there. I can't believe it. Even in 2004, I can't believe that it made it into this movie.
And I'm upset that I didn't see how bad it was until now. Yeah. Because it's the rumor I heard, because the thing about the book is it discusses the racism in the town of Odessa, but it does in the movie, it doesn't really do that. It has racism stuff in it, but it's not discussing like the racial tensions within the town between white and black players, and how Permian was like the last school to integrate in Texas, basically, is what I think we would say, like till the early 80s. Seeing all that stuff, I heard that Peter Berg had to agree not to talk about the racial tensions in the town in the movie, so they could actually film the movie there, because the town hated the book because it kind of talked about all that stuff. So when hearing that, you think there'd be no kind of racial issues in the movie, but in reality, they just make Dallas Carter, the team they face at the end of the movie, as this big, bad, like dirty, crooked, all black team. And like every person you meet is not a good person.
There's a sequence, and I like kind of was like, what? There's a sequence when the coaches are meeting about where to play. And the coach from Carter says, I want all black refs. And everyone else just kind of turns on him and is like, what? Why would we give you that? What? Which I don't think in Texas, if you're an all black team playing for the state championships in the 80s in Texas, I don't think that's an irrational thing to say, hey, I don't want, there's a possibility that these racist white Texans are going to be biased. Yeah, but they play it off as I mean, there's literally a sequence when a bad call is made and all the white refs missed it, and we see that the only black ref on the staff purposefully calls a bad call for the all black team, and I was like, that what? How is that in this movie?
Now, the thing is that the bad call actually did happen. I don't know if it was a black or white ref is the thing.
But just the way they shoot it, they're all standing around in a circle and they say, "You're the only one who saw it. Did you? What was it good?" And he says, "Oh, it was good." And then they immediately cut to a replay of it not being good.
And he's like, "I'm positive."
Yeah, and the message is, I mean, you can't help but read the message as this guy is racially biased towards this other team. Like that is what that scene is saying,
because that's what's been set up to say.
It's oof.
That was my big thing, is that it felt like a lot of the, besides Booby Miles and his uncle, it feels like a lot of the black characters are on the sidelines. For example, one of the big ones is Chris Comer, who's their backup, who comes in and has become their backup running back. I don't know if he has any lines in this movie. And that's Lee Thompson Young, who was famous for Famous Jet Jackson at Disney Channel, and was kind of an up-and-coming like actor at that point. And I was like, oh, that's the guy from the Disney Channel show. And I think he may have 5 lines. I think he has a couple lines of Booby at the beginning and a couple lines of Booby at one point, but like does not have many lines. And here's the thing. The real character, Chris Comer, still on the record books as the third best season as a rusher in Permian high school history. Like in that season that's shown in the movie, he rushes for almost like, I think it was like 2,700 yards or whatever in the year. I think he averaged like 142 yards per game, which is insane. and like he probably has no lines in that movie, it feels like. And even Ivory Christian, he doesn't have the I think the offensive lineman or defensive end, I can't remember what position he plays. He's on the defense, the defensive end. He doesn't like, he has a few lines, and his only big moment is his like outburst in the
the whole joke is that he doesn't talk.
Yeah.
And then he was the only one to, what didn't it say he was the only one to get an NCAA scholarship out of the whole team?
Yeah, out of the whole team. There's some stuff to that though. This is a conversation for all this later. Well, actually, we'll say it now. In terms of the culture of the town, all the guys who at the end of the movie say, hey, they went off and played college football, all left after their first year playing college football. All of them quit the team, including him. He left after his freshman year. Lucas Blackwood or Mike Winchell was at Baylor. He left after his freshman year. Chavez was at Harvard, left after a day. Someone either got hurt or they were just like, it wasn't like high school football, is what they kind of said. And I think it didn't work again in terms of, you have the racial issues in this movie. Also, just the complete lack of female characters in this film.
Mm-hmm. Like
Connie Britton. It's Connie Britton and Lucas Black's mom. That is all you have in terms of female characters in this movie. One is portrays like a crazy character, and one has no lines.
Well, and the actress who plays Chris Comer's girlfriend, who has probably as many lines as he does, because there's a storyline set up at the beginning where he feels like Booby's better than him, and she keeps trying to get him to stand up to Booby. She's credited as Comer's girlfriend. She didn't even have a name in the script.
This is something as a writer. So here's the thing, because this is a different topic that I'm going off of. But I had a note that came back to me recently on a script when someone's like, you shouldn't name this character because they're not that important. I feel like naming a character, even if they have a line, they should be given some sort of name. And this is just a side topic, but that just says to me, like, we don't think this character is that important. She is literally only there for plot.
The high school girl that's sleeping with Tim McGraw, which is also something that's never addressed again.
Is she a high school girl? She's just a young, girl, like a young, like mid-20s.
Amber Heard knows her. Like I think that's supposed to be the joke. Is like Amber Heard knows, is like friends with her.
I missed that. Okay.
She has a name. Her name's Flippy. Yeah,
cool.
I mean, that's what I took away from it. Like, Tim McGraw's girlfriend is obviously very young, and there's a scene when she walks out into the room where Garrett Hedlund and Amber Heard are, and Amber Heard speaks to her like they know each other, and I just kind of took that to mean maybe she had just graduated the year before or something like that.
Because she did walk out in the field when Tim McGraw runs out in the field, starts like, "Why are you dropping the ball, son?" Mm-hmm. And starts like kind of hitting him or whatever in public view of everyone, because he's physically abusive. Anyway, so I think the racial stuff, the lack of female characters, and the lack of development with a lot of the characters, it's just like, so it's all kind of surface level. And I had the next few things up are like difference between book and movie and show and movie. I think with both the book and show is I think they go more in detail with all of these things, with all these issues that are trying to be discussed in the movie, but aren't fully discussed in the movie. And I think, I haven't read the book, but it just sounds like the book does provide that more, with like certain chapters focusing on the town, the culture. The show so far is doing that, where it's like it's kind of taking these characters that are like surrogate versions of the movie and exploring those themes that are brought up in the film about a character taking care of his sick relative, one big star athlete who gets hurt, one big star athlete who is a black athlete in a white, pretty much predominantly white town, and realizes that all they care about is that he can run the football, and what's going to happen if he can't do that anymore is kind of the thing. So it definitely delves into all of that, and the movie doesn't fully, it just scratches the surface of that. So we're like, by the end of it, when you're having the big moment when they're all leaving, I'm just kind of like, cool. Like when Lucas Black and Garrett Hedlund and Jay Hernandez, I'm just like, Chavez had very few lines in this movie too. Like, it's just like, it feels like at the end, I thought we were supposed to care about all these guys and look at the life they're leaving behind, when reality, we don't really know the full life. They're just leaving football, and the movie hasn't really painted football as a great thing for some people.
Yeah, they make like 2 references to Chavez like getting good grades and being like Mr. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then in the end it goes, he went to Harvard, and I went, what?
I remember that when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, that's at
least give me like Chavez. A little bit more background. You just said he was good in school. You didn't say he was like Harvard out of a tiny little town in Texas. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Like you're never seeing, I don't think you ever see them in a classroom just like having a conversation in this movie. And it's a high school movie. I think it was just so focused on like the culture of football and football being the spectacle that it lost sight. That's when I say Linklater was directing it. That's what it feels like. Maybe they're missing. I don't know if I would fully like the Linklater version of this, where it's like almost, maybe, I don't know how he wrote it, but like no football and a lot of talking. But I do think you need a little bit of that character development and almost just the discussions between characters. So I think another thing that is they talk about is when they're just like, we're just 17, and Garrett Hedlund goes, I don't feel 17. Like that's like one of the few times early on where you see them actually discussing like what it's like being a teenager and how they're feeling about it. Awards for this film. Least realistic player. This one was a tough one because the football is done so well.
Yeah.
It hides a lot of players that might not be that good.
Yeah. It's hard. It's, it's not like a baseball movie where you're sitting there and watching a pitcher wind up and like it's so quick cut that you have a hard time even keeping track of who's who, much less like, if their form's good.
The one I would say, and this is not a knack on him, really. It's more a knack on what's happening in the football time. I would say Lucas Black. Because it feels like every throw he does is 50 yards.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he can do that or if that's what would be happening at that point in high school football.
Especially on a team whose previous strategy was just hand the ball to Boobie and let him go.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden when they need, and I felt that same way in the pilot. The second string quarterback comes in and he doesn't even know the playbook, but by the end of the second half, which is all that he's played, he throws like a 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, oh my god, he's got a cannon on his arm, or whatever the guy says. And I'm like, okay, well, hold up a second. We're like, maybe at least with Lucas Black's character, we see him improve over the course of the season, but we watch this guy in like 10 minutes of play.
The show, he goes up and down during the season in the TV show. Like he has some bad games, but I understand what you mean, because I do agree. That's what Lucas Black, because I was so like, did they actually throw this much in 88? Because the thing that I know about, I had to read a book for one of my internships about like the football game and stuff like that, and learning about the history of football and realizing how passing wasn't that big of a thing till later on, because like people saw running as the big part of football, especially in the South. And so I was like, did they really throw this much? And they did throw more when Boobie got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like, I think I looked at his average and it was like he only averaged, again, like 140, 150 yards per game throwing. And I don't think if that's all he averaged, I don't think he'd be throwing that much. Because like, so he throws like 2 50-yard passes in a game. That's 100 yards, right? So you're saying he threw 3 times an entire game. Like I think like there was no like short kind of passes. I think the game, and especially his quarterback play, it felt too modern. Like he's throwing the ball on the run more, like off one leg, and kind of, this is just very specific about football stuff.
Well, and that's what they set up in the beginning. They set up in the beginning that a lot of times Boobie was making the passes too.
Yeah,
which is I do think that it's interesting that they set Lucas Black up to say, yeah, this is our first string quarterback, but he just hands the ball to Boobie. That's all he does.
Yeah.
And so you don't have that thing where in the pilot where it's like, this is the second string quarterback. Why are we paying attention to him this whole time? Because he's going to be the first string quarterback by the end of this episode. They don't set it up like that so much where we get the feeling that Lucas Black is a fine player. He's being drafted to, some college no one's ever heard of in Oklahoma. Like,
no, he went to Baylor. He went to Baylor.
Oh, but that's not who. There's a scene when he's like talking to like Oklahoma Western or something.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You get the feeling that he's a perfectly okay player, but then when Booby's out, all the weight is put on his shoulders, and he kind of rises to the occasion a little too easily.
Another thing I'm talking about that I made it realize just how almost fickle everyone is. Is like, well, Booby's the leader. Booby gets hurt, and now all of a sudden, Coach Gaines, Billy Bob Thornton, is like at Lucas Black's house. Okay, you're our leader now. Like, I've always thought this way about you. You're just like, wait, what? Like, it feels just like with this culture is that one person gets hurt, you go to the next guy and say how they were actually the chosen one, but we didn't see it yet.
Yeah. And
that's kind of the scene that he has with Lucas Black when he comes to the house, and they're just like, do you want to get out of here, son? Well, you need to play some football. You want to get out of here?
Is it any given Sunday? There's a movie that talks about football players being gladiators.
I think that's any given Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's definitely that. All right, next one in. We're gonna watch you till you're drained, and then bring the next one in after that.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. And so I feel like it's that scene is seen as more like an inspirational moment for Lucas Black, but it's actually kind of a dark moment to me looking back on it now and talking about this. It's just how it's just like, okay, cool, next guy up. What's gonna and race doesn't have the issue with this. It's just like, okay, cool. Bowie Miles got hurt. Let's go Lucas Black. When he gets hurt, we'll go to the next guy. We just go with Lucas Black as well for least realistic.
Yeah.
I think it's just more the. I don't think it's really him. I think it's the style and the play strategy. Like it's very like sports centric here with that. Like it just feels like I don't see him doing that well in every game. And also too, the weird thing is, so Lucas Black's 5'9". Mike Winchell was 6 foot tall. He was actually tied for the second tallest player on the high school football team. And Lucas Black is kind of portrayed as like the smallest guy on the football team. In reality, Garrett Hedlund's character, Don Billingsley, was the smallest player on the real football team at 5'7".
Wow.
Yeah, and you're just like, he was the fullback? At 5'7"? Jesus. Most realistic player.
I might have to go with Billingsley. The tackles
really?
the tackles in this game.
That's true.
In this movie, where I was kind of, and this says something about football. I was kind of sitting there and I was like, because I know they had a lot of real football players in this movie, but I was sitting there like, do you put a football player in for that scene, or do you put a stunt?
A stunt, yeah.
Do you put a stunt guy in for that scene, which says a lot about football, but But yeah, there were some tackles that were wild, and I mean, it's obviously a tackle is a little bit easier to shoot than someone actually passing the ball with correct form. But they set him up as this player. He's like on the bench, just like muttering to himself, and Billy Bob's like, "Is everything all right, man?" And
he's a weird character.
Get in and go get him, and you hear him like screaming as he's tackling people, and I believed him. I believed him as fullback for sure.
That's fair. I put Lee Thompson Young as Chris Comer. As the running back. I feel like in terms of like form, it was believable that he became the superstar.
There's several times when he blows through some blocks and you're like the people trying to block him weren't holding back. Like that guy dove for him and he got around him.
He's able to get and you're just kind of like, okay, cool. I believe this guy became and he also like at first struggles in those first few plays and then just kind of like is able to kind of turn it on, which is what exactly happened. It's like they're talking about and what I'm reading about the book was that like no one knew this backup running back was going to be like one of the best players in school history. And then it kind of says at the end of the movie where like the next year, like Chris Comer and these guys led them to a state championship and actually led them to an undefeated state championship season. Also were named national champions by people because like the next year they went undefeated. The closest game was Midland Lee, which was their big rival in the movie they lose to. 17-3 was their biggest. That was their biggest, their smallest defeat.
Isn't it wild that just because this guy was like embedded with them for this year, like this is the team that we get on film when they were like the worst team?
They were the worst team, but it was just like they were like 12-3. It was just like it was because in reality, in the movie, this is one big difference. In reality, they didn't lose to Dallas Carter in the state finals. They lost him in the semifinals. That was changed. So like it wasn't even the state finals they lost to. It was like, cool, we didn't get to the show. But in the movie, it's portrayed like they got to the state finals and they lost, like they were this close to winning.
Yeah.
When in reality, Dallas Carter faced someone else. The other thing too is that Dallas Carter actually got stripped of the title due to like player grades or whatever. They were like forged or whatever. There's a good documentary called What Carter Lost. I think it was 30 for 30, where they go into how Dallas Carter was like kind of poorly portrayed in this movie and in the book and everything, because they're portrayed as like crooks and criminals. And the problem was there were some guys who were football players who, after the season was over, were actually caught like robbing a bunch of locations in Dallas, basically. But it was more like an upper middle class black kind of area community that it was from, or the Dallas Carter was in. Who's the X factor of the movie?
I mean, I think you got to go with Booby. Even once he's sidelined. Are we talking about the movie or are we talking about the team?
The movie.
Yeah, I think he continued to be my favorite performance.
So I was actually putting him at the MVP.
All right.
Like
okay.
I feel like I originally had Billy Bob. But when watching Friday Night Lights with Kyle Chandler, I realized how much Billy Bob, what Billy Bob didn't have. Like I like nothing is really memorable about Billy Bob's performance to me, honestly, except his speech at halftime. And the only part that's memorable is not really his speech. It's Derek Luke's reaction to when he's like, "You think about Bobby Miles." That's what is in my brain. If if you have Derek Luke in that scene, that speech is that impactful.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with him MVP. If that's the case, I think I'm going Tim McGraw for X Factor.
So am I.
Even though his character needed to go to rehab and needed to really face some real justice.
He steals every scene. He steals every scene he's in.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching the movie the first time because I was never a big country fan growing up in Alabama, but I knew who everyone was. And I remember watching Friday Night Lights and be like, this guy's really good. Who is this person? And then when I get to the credits, I go, wow, was Tim McGraw in this movie? Where was he at? And then I realized, oh wait, that was the abusive father who, like, because I'm used to seeing like Tim McGraw, like kind of beard, black cowboy hat, like he looks like he's chiseled and like he works out a lot. When this Tim McGraw is like, he's been drinking since he woke up. Like he doesn't got comb over. Like this dude, like his best days are way behind him. And he's using his son as a way to like get those days back in a way.
I want to give out a X Factor Part 2.
Okay.
The guy at the burger stand. I absolutely love that scene. The guy comes up to Lucas Black and is like, "Hey, can you hold my kid?" He's like, "All right, you babysit him for a little while. We'll be back in like 2 hours." I loved that guy.
Wow. Like that's it. That's the scene.
He just talks for a solid like 2 minutes, and Lucas Black says nothing. But he's like, you can tell he like shows him like he's a former player, and you can see he's got his state championship ring on, and he's like, man, just enjoy it, man, because look what happens. You got a kid, like all this stuff, and
like there we go. That's it. Here, just hold him for a few hours. I need a little time. We'll be back. We'll be back and pick him up.
Yeah, I love that guy. I looked him up on IMDb. I was immediately like, what's that guy doing? That guy was great.
We gotta get him for something, you know?
Yeah.
Let's see. Other interesting info. What do I have here? Derek Luke was 33 when he made this movie. Had never played football before the film.
Really?
Yeah. As we said, he's our MVP of the movie, I think. I think he's just like... I think if you take him out of this movie... I don't think it works in any way. I think I think there was a smart decision in terms of just actor wise to keep Booby to come back to the state finals and have all those moments with him. I agree. It probably doesn't fully work in terms of like the arc of his character, but I honestly don't think that I think
like
you're kind of.
I didn't not enjoy seeing him on the sidelines, and it's a great moment when you see him, like, because all he was before was about hyping himself up and like putting everybody else down, and when you see him just start hyping, like use his powers for good or whatever, you know, use his hype powers to build everyone else up. That's a great moment, but like realistically,
when him and Billingsley are the ones who kind of like were always back and forth, because Billingsley was like the second string type fullback. I'm not gonna give the ball to you, you just block for me. And he's the one like they're gonna try to strip from you. You hold on to it, like giving him the like he gives more motivational speeches on the actual sideline than Billy Bob does, I think. Or just memorable. Like he's like he's patting the ref on the butt as he's going by, like, come on, let's go. Like it's just he's a very like energetic character. And like I do wish I saw more Derek Luke in movies. Like I think he's a talented actor. I wish we saw more of. Let's see. Connie Britton and Brad Leland, who plays like a business guy in the movie, are the only two that actually came back for the show on NBC and were there for most of the time.
You know who else came back for the show though?
Oh, the reporter on the show. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was just gonna say the soundtrack of the movie, because they use the exact same songs.
for the pilot episode, I was like, oh, that was in.
Oh, there's Black Betty. Oh, there's Louie.
So yeah, same tracks. Connie Britton and Brad Leland. Their wide receiver, who was never really mentioned in the film, Lloyd Hill, still holds third place for his season in '88 with 1,300 receiving yards.
I thought that at some point in the movie, I was like, do they even have a wide receiver on this team?
They never talk about him. Their average margin of victory in '88, even though they lost 3 games, their average margin of victory was 35 points. That was their average. Their average in '89, when they won every game, margin of victory 33 points, but they had 8 shutouts of 16 games. Like it was like scores was like 55-0, like every game when they were shutting teams out. Also Universal is currently in the midst of trying to remake this film. Quote unquote, a reimagining of Friday Night Lights. Now it's just like, what kind of reimagining can you do about Texas football? It's set in like the future. But I was interested. This is not who is currently attached to it, but when they first announced it, you know who was originally attached to it when they first announced it like 2 years ago?
To be the coach or to direct?
To be the director, to write and direct the Friday Night Lights remake. David Gordon Green.
I was gonna say he'd be good. He'd be good for something like this.
He'd be good because I think he could get the action of it and also get the small town vibe to it.
Well, and you got. I mean, if you want to see who could do a better take on football, look at who had a better Boston Marathon movie.
Ooh,
David Gordon Green.
Shots fired there. Okay, moving on. Now it's not him. Now it's one of the co-showrunners of Waco on Paramount, which had Taylor Kitsch, who's also in the show.
You know what? The movie sold me on
Garrett Hedlund.
The TV show did not sell me on Taylor Kitsch.
You gotta stay in it though. You gotta stay in it. I was sold on Taylor Kitsch in this. Well, it's more like I see why people were so attracted. Like, we got put in the movies.
Literally, anytime I'm like, why is Taylor Kitsch still getting movies? People are always like, have you seen Friday Night Lights? And I was like, no, but that was also 8 years ago. Why is he still making movies?
Questions for this. How do you rank Coach Gaines' halftime speech? Out of 10. 1 out of 10.
I give it an 8, but it would have dropped if Booby wasn't there.
I give it a 6.
It would have dropped to a 6 if Booby hadn't been there.
Okay, I give it a 6 because I feel like there's too many cliches to Hoosiers in the speech. There's some like, no matter what the scoreboard says out there.
I was just really blown away that he had something to say other than like go play football, because that's like all he said for the movie. And then I was like, what's his speech gonna be? Get out there and play some football. And it was like he had some stuff to say this time. Like
in terms of like coach speeches, this is not one I think of though. Really,
no.
That's the thing.
Well, and he got so close. I mean, I haven't even watched the show, and I know Clear Eyes, Full Hearts Can't Lose. And like he almost says it.
He almost says it.
Yeah.
He goes
with our eyes clear and love in our hearts, or something like that. I was like, that's
what I wrote. That's what I wrote too. And it's just and then like a few seconds, I goes, you just can't lose.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's that thing, but not quite. That's the thing everyone says.
I did hear in an interview with Billy Bob was that he was able to ad lib some of that speech, one thing that Peter Berg does in this movie, and I think in the show is what I read, is that he kind of lets the actors like play within the script. And so like, I wonder if the script actually said, you play with clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. And he was just like, no, I'm not going to say that. If Billingsley fumbles that much, is he still playing? Like, is he still playing in the state finals?
Kid can tackle. I mean, but that's the thing.
It's like he fumbles every time he touches the ball.
Yeah. Well, and I think they needed a little more, background about how he got better. Like him working on that, other than being abused by his father into not fumbling anymore. But I mean, once again, it's the same setup that they kind of set up for Lucas Black's character, in that like he wasn't supposed to hold the ball. Like Booby was the only person who was supposed to touch the ball that season. And they had to deal with all these people. They were just going to skate by on like everybody being fine and Booby being great, and then they had to like bring everyone up. But the kind of understanding I think that the film sets up is like, oh, Billy Bob sees how hard his dad is on him, so he's not going to be hard on him about it. But it's like, I mean, he still needs to tell him not to fumble.
Because he fumbles a lot. Like that was just my thing. Does Permian win the state finals if Bowie Miles doesn't get hurt? I
mean, that seems to be what everyone was telling us was going to happen. I mean, I don't know. I feel like with the way Carter was tackling, they probably would have hurt him anyway. At some point, in the final.
I don't think they would have won actually.
I mean, if he goes to the finals and Carter smacks him once and he goes down, then the whole team is lost without him. I mean, that's what we saw, was that they had to figure out how to work without him, and if they don't have to learn that for the whole season and then they lose him there, then they're just done.
Hard one, because this is kind of a more recent film and you have a TV show. If made today, which you're talking about doing, who do you cast?
Yeah, this is tough because I don't know that many like younger actors who could pass as high schoolers.
Who do you cast in the coach?
As a coach.
And Connie Britton's character.
Are we gonna give her some lines?
Yeah, we're gonna give her some lines.
I'll tell you some kids I got in mind.
Okay.
I believe his name is pronounced Dacre Montgomery from Stranger Things.
Okay.
He was in Power Rangers as well. If you saw either of those.
I did see Power Rangers.
He was the main kid in Power Rangers.
He's
my Billingsley 100%.
Okay.
He was like the villain in the last season of Stranger Things, and could pull off that.
I buy that.
Also he's got a great mullet, so he's ready to go.
Yeah, I could buy this.
Coach, give me.
I mean, I'm picking Kyle Chandler all day, baby.
You're going Kyle Chandler?
I'm going Kyle Chandler. I'm just doubling down on Kyle Chandler.
It's weird to be someone who loves Kyle Chandler and hasn't seen Friday Night Lights.
I know, because
I love Kyle Chandler. I think he's fantastic.
He won an Emmy for Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, I think he's great. But like when people are like, yeah, because he's Coach whatever, I'm like, I've never seen it. I still think he's great.
He's Coach Eric Taylor, baby.
Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street, fantastic. I don't know anyone else who could have nailed that role like you did in that movie. Who do I cast? That's tough, man.
Because it's like middle-aged. Is McConaughey your guy? Go with McConaughey.
I would watch. Yeah, give me that. I would watch that. Oh
McConaughey
man,
as your high school football coach.
Yeah, I would watch that.
But McConaughey. Who's one of his good like?
I mean, I was just thinking the other day. We as a society, we got to put Michelle Monaghan in more stuff, man.
I agree with that.
We got to get Michelle Monaghan in there, and she's True Detective.
Yeah, well, so so the thing is, if you take the storyline of the show, because the show is that Connie Britton becomes like the guidance counselor at the school, is what it is, and so she kind of becomes like a big like kind of figure for a lot of the female characters in the show, where everyone's kind of going to her with a lot of these questions about what's happening, and even a lot of the male characters too. You put Michelle Monaghan in that role, that'd be interesting. Mm-hmm. McConaughey and Michelle Monaghan.
You know what? Here we go. Here's my quarterback. I'm trying to think. Here's the thing. I'm trying to think guys that could pass as high schoolers, but are also like look like football players. Because I know plenty of guys who could pass for 17, but would play like a nerd. The kid who played Aladdin is ripped, and is good at being like a little more timid and that kind of thing.
So he's your quarterback.
He's my quarterback. He's on an awful television show on Hulu called Reprisal that is wonderfully, probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in like the most amazing way. But he's like in a biker gang, but is like the most timid person in the biker gang. And those are the kind of vibes. Those are the Lucas Black vibes I want.
Okay. You got Boobie Miles. Derek Luke was 33, so
that's true.
You can get a little bit older.
Give me someone. Yeah, because you gotta have someone like stacked. Like,
yeah,
Derek Luke definitely had the muscle tone of a 33-year-old. I was like, the first time we walked into the gym, I was like, that guy is not 17.
When he's running down the street with no shirt on, you're just like, whoo.
There's no way that guy's 17. Just not possible.
Just get Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah, give me Michael B. Jordan. I'll buy Michael B. Jordan to 17 if he wants me to.
He's in the show. So he's in the show in like season 4 and 5.
I mean, if we're going for someone really stacked, what's the guy's name from Moonlight? You just see him walk out on the field.
Trevante Rhodes. Trevante Rhodes is your Boobie Miles.
Give me Trevante Rhodes. Just get out there and just mow the field down.
He's 30. he's younger than Derek Luke. Who's like, who is this kid?
I don't think that works if we cast everyone else to actually look 17 and then we bring in a 30-year-old. No, but okay. I mean, other than being ripped as hell, like I totally bought him as because he's putting on like he's putting on this act of being an NFL player. Like the character himself is acting like he's already in the NFL, and I think that's what makes that moment. He that moment so powerful when he like breaks that character. And you just see him really for like the first time. Because
in the scene prior to that, he's very still like in the Boobie Miles role, and then like right when he gets in the car, it's just like complete breakdown.
I was just gonna say, I mean, that's another thing I think when I was watching it, and I was like, how many times did they watch Any Given Sunday? Because that was Willie Beeman. Like, Boobie Miles was Willie Beeman.
It's definitely in that vein. This is back to what didn't work for me. It didn't feel 1980s to me throughout most of the movie.
Mm-mm.
It's supposed to take late 88, but
except for maybe Billingsley's costumes. He was always wearing like a cut off jean jacket. I was like, that's 80s. That's about it.
Well, that and a little bit of Boobie Miles' like wardrobe early on, and then the music he's listening to, but it feels very small town anywhere modern day.
Mm.
Also, too, it just I think because of the visuals were so modern in terms of the way it was cutting, and it was very handheld, it just feels like more mid 2000s Texas to me.
Yeah.
What genres does this movie fit within? Trying to bring it around to genres every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a sports movie.
Yeah.
I was reading you sent me Roger Ebert's review. Mm-hmm. And he said this movie reminded him of Last Picture Show.
Yeah,
I was like, okay.
Here's the weird thing: a lot of critics said that.
I'd like a little bit more of the like small town drama. But yeah, I guess like a small town drama. I think it's trying to balance the two. Is what we're seeing here. We're seeing someone trying to blend those two genres, and it's not done perfectly.
Would you consider it a coming of age movie?
I don't think so. I don't think any of the. I think it might be trying to be, but I don't think because none of those storylines are wrapped up other than telling us they went to college. We really don't see what they learned about we see what they learned about playing football, but we don't see what they really learned about being a person.
Okay. I agree with that.
You know, we see them take these lessons and apply them to the field, but we don't, and then they tell us that they went to college. Like, we don't really get the chance to see that play out.
Yeah, I agree. I think it strives for it, but it just does not. It doesn't reach it. Last thing, how does this rate in terms of football movies? Is it top 3, top 5?
I'll give it top 5.
Top 5?
Yeah, if I'm going top 3, I'm probably going in no particular order. Remember the Titans, Any Given Sunday, and The Replacements?
Yeah, I wondered when doing this, should we talk about The Replacements? But because I don't want to say I'm stealing everything from Bill Simmons in this moment in time, but I heard him talk about it, and I was like, huh, Bill Simmons likes The Replacements. Maybe there is
everybody likes The Replacements.
I think it wasn't well received when it came out, like critically. I think that's one that like it gained a following over like TBS showings, because that's a movie that feels like it's always like TBS or TNT on the weekends during football seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is in top 5 for me. I think just because it captures the football play very well, but it doesn't hit number 1 because it doesn't fully capture. And I think Remember the Titans is an example where you can capture the characters' lives and kind of their inner conflicts without focusing all the way on football. Like
Right.
Remember the Titans does a good job of like getting all the dynamics and all the conflict with every character.
Yeah, and you know, when we're talking about coming of age stuff, like it comes off as it's pretty cheesy, but like you see, you get to see exactly what lessons they learned playing football, and you get to see that applied. You see every single person how that applies to their life.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, that's our Friday Night Lights episode. It's not. I think it's streaming on like Cinemax Go, like Max Go or something. So if you have Cinemax on your cable, or go watch it. This TV show, however, is streaming on Hulu, all 5 seasons. So worth checking out, especially if you like looking at early shows of golden age of television and kind of seeing what became of everything. And a lot of Kyle Chandler, Connie Britton, Jesse Plemons, young Jesse Plemons in the show.
Yeah.
Taylor Kitsch, a couple other young up and coming actors at the time, and then I think if you stay around, Michael B. Jordan starts showing up. Season 4 is what it is. Yeah, that's all we have for you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Our Medium's doing very well right now. We're trying to get more articles out there, so make sure you look at that. That's actually starting to grow again during this quarantine. People are reading a lot of content. Yeah, so just stay tuned. What we're going to do, like I said, we're now kind of just playing it by ear right now, because all of our planned episodes were like based around events that were happening in the world. So we're just trying to figure everything out. Hopefully we can do our Peter Weir episode soon, when we catch up on all of his movies, and hopefully do more directors like that. For now, we're going to try to stick with these kind of movies that we're looking at. We'll see if we're going to do sports next week or the week after. We'll find out. Again, I hope you're all staying safe and trying to keep some sort of semblance of a normal life with kind of routines and everything. So yeah, Thomas, as always, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, man.
And guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope you listen to more episodes soon. Bye.